Hi, this is Todd Davis from Seabury Design. So far in this series, we've already gone through the process of building a blog module, added the functionality to add a new blog and to update a blog and delete one, and along the way we've discovered how to use some of the user controls that are built into DotNetNuke, such as the label control and the text editor control. And we've also created a data access layer, learned to troubleshoot that a little bit. What we're going to do today is go ahead and add the functionality to the front page of the blog. And this is just going to give us a little more practice on how to access the data access layer and tweak that a little bit. So let's go ahead and get started on that. Now, we already went ahead and made in SQL Server here the stored procedures that we're going to need to get our blogs. Let me just scroll down to that real quickly. Okay, here we have get blog. Now this particular one, by the way, we should go back and fix this while I'm looking at it. It's asking for module ID, and we don't need that. We're just going to get it by blog ID, but we'll go back and fix that. This gets to one blog, and if we go down to list blog, you'll see that it gets everything. Matter of fact, let's go ahead and run this. Well, we don't have any blogs in there to get. The problem with ListBlog is that it's not accepting any procedures, and as we talked about in the beginning of this series, each blog module is going to be very specific depending on which page it's on, or if there are several on the same page, and if they're in different portals. And that we're going to need to pass in both the portal ID and the module ID in order to get a list of all the blogs that are associated with our particular instance of the blog module. Obviously, what we got from our template tools does not include that, and we're not telling it to list the things that way, so we're going to need to add those parameters. So let's say at portal ID, which is an integer, and module ID, which is also an integer, from blog, I'm just going to format this so it's a little more readable, where portal ID equals portal ID and module ID equals module ID. Check the syntax on that, make sure I didn't do anything funny. And now we're all set. Our list blog will take a portal ID and a module ID, and now we know we're only going to get the blogs that are specific to this portal and module ID. The problem with what we have now is that even though it's in a stored procedure, we have to get our data access layer to jive with that. So let's go back to our module. Now, as we said before, blog info is already set up for this, so we don't have to change that. So we're going to start with blog controller and look in ListBlog as an array list. We don't need to change this because we're just calling ListBlog, but where we will need to change, we're passing blog info in, and blog info is already going to contain the portal ID and module ID. All that information is going to go through. So let's trace that. We'll go down, go to definition. That'll take us to data provider. Here's ListBlog as iData reader. What we want to do here, and we're going to need to go back and change, is we want to pass in the portal. Here, I want this to match. As a matter of fact, I'll steal them from right below. The portal ID and the module ID as an integer. And now we're going to need to pass those through. Portal ID and module ID in ListBlog. Now we're going to call ListBlog with passing this portal ID and module ID through, which is good. Here we go, ListBlog, portal ID, module ID, and finally in SQL Data Provider. Again, we're going to pass portal ID and module ID. And here, when we call ListBlog, we need to add the parameters. Portal ID, module ID. We're going to pass those two parameters. I'll go ahead and do a build just to make sure I didn't mess anything up horribly here. Good. Two succeeded, and we're good to go. As you can see, working with the data access layer is not terribly complicated, especially now that we have everything named exactly the same, and you can see that the parameters are the same going through. As long as everything matches, your data access layer is going to work. We also talked about getBlog before, that we were passing an unnecessary parameter, and it's not hurting anything, but for the sake of argument, and to make things kind of professional, let's go back and fix that. We don't need our module ID passed in. So let's take that out altogether. Good. Now that that's changed again, let's go back. Blog controller, get blog. We're no longer passing this module ID, so we don't need it in there. And we don't need it in there. Okay. Go to Data Provider, get blog, take out the module ID, go into SQL Data Provider, get blog, take out the module ID. And we don't need to pass it as a parameter either. Do a quick build. Okay, and here in our code in blog edit, we were doing a get blog. We were calling the module ID, so we can take that parameter out. Do a quick build. Great, everything succeeded. We should probably go back at this point and double check that we can go ahead and get, when we do an update statement, get the blog as it should work. Okay, I've refreshed the screen after our last build. Now, before I can really test this, we had deleted our last blog as a test of the delete. So let's go in and add a new blog. Otherwise, we'll have nothing to test, to update, and get. And we'll write test title, test text, update. Good. We'll double check that it's in our table and that's still working properly. Sure enough. Okay, now we have a blog ID of 2 because we used an auto increment. So I can't use that blog ID of 1 anymore, and that's okay. But let's just bear that in mind as we go back. So you know what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit add new blog again just to get the correct line up here, and then I'll type in blog ID 2. And if we changed everything correctly, then yep, sure enough, it pulls up test title, test text, everything's working properly for us. Now we need to go back and build our blog main control. Let me just close some of this stuff up. Blog ASCX, and we'll open up the code behind it as well. If we look in the event handler here during page load, we're not actually grabbing anything yet. So let's start here in blog ASCX. I suppose the easiest way to do this is to add a repeater. A data list would probably work as well, but I think a repeater is going to give us a little more flexibility in terms of what we see on the screen. And we can call this repeater blog. And we'll need to use an item template. So we'll go ahead and auto-create that. And then in each one of these, we're going to need two things, both the title and the text. So let's make a table. Border equals 0. Width equals 100%. And I won't mess with the cell padding or anything for right now. me just flip back and forth real quick because that'll build my spacing for me. There we go. And down here what I'll do is I'll say align equals left, v-align equals top. And we'll copy that through. And then here we'll do class equals subhead. And on this one, class equals normal. Great. All we have to do now is actually add the values that are going to go in there. Now, I don't know about you, but I always forget how these things are written out, so I'm going to cheat a little bit. Let's go back in, and just down here I'm going to add a data grid real quick. Do the property builder, columns, let's add a bound column, and let's call it text. Convert it. Say OK, go back into HTML, and here is the part that I'm looking for. Okay, well that was just temporary so I could get the code written for me. This is actually going to be our title, and this is going to be our text. Great, so we have a repeater blog. Pretty much everything we need is in there. Great, we see that everything is data bound. So all we need to do over here, I don't really need this list that was thrown in for us. I'm going to change this real quick to blog controller, and we can say, let me copy that, we can say rpt blog data source equals blog controller ListBlog portal ID module ID. And data bind it. Great. Now we just need to go back, and we're going to have to refresh the screen and see if we get any errors, and if not, we should at least get a listing with the title and the text of our new blog in there. Alright, our page is refreshed, and now you can see test title, test text. We actually picked up our blog. Let's go ahead and add a new blog just to make sure that everything's working pretty much like we think it should. This is my new blog, and this is the text of my blog. And we'll say this is my blog, just to make sure that it looks right. Let's say update. Strong enough. Sure enough, we got that. However, it's not showing up correctly here. And one other thing that we're lacking at this point in time is a way to go ahead and automatically edit these. Two things we're going to need to check for. Well, first we're going to need to add some sort of edit link. We need to put that in there somewhere convenient. And we need to make sure that it only shows up if you are able to edit. So let's go back into our code, because we want to be able to edit the strong right here. I'm going to go back into the HTML, and let's see, what is the best way to add this? Let's add Actually, before I get started, I think that the best way to handle this is, again, to go back and see what the core team did. Usually when you go in to edit something, you'll have a little pencil. It's the .NetNuke standard, and that pencil will then take you over to the edit page, and I think that's a pretty good way to handle it. So let's go back. I'm going to, again, go in Desktop Modules under the Frequently Asked Questions, and let's take a look right here at Frequently Asked Questions ASCX, which I'll just open up in Notepad. And this is kind of neat. If you see right here is ASP hyperlink with a navigate URL, and there's a special function, and this is a function that's built into .NetNuke called edit URL, and we're going to pass it some sort of parameter and then a value for that parameter. And we'll talk about that in 1 second. And then here we're saying the visibility of it, and we're testing is editable, which is going to see if the person looking at the page has edit rights, such as an admin or a host or somebody that you've given edit permissions to this particular page. And then as for the rest of it, we're just getting the little pencil icon by picking edit.gif. And again, that's set, its visibility is set through to is editable. So let's copy this right here. Control C. And I'm going to go back and add it right here before the title, because I think that's probably the best place to put it. Let me just make sure I put that in the right place. There we go. Now let's take a look at what we just inserted. Take that spacing out a little bit as well. Okay. Edit URL. When we go in, let's take a look at this real quick. When I hover over Add New Blog, if you look down bottom here, you'll see the page. Oh, no, I guess you're not going to see the page. When you look up here at localhost, as a matter of fact, let's click on Add New Blog. We said that several things popped in as a result of hitting Add New Blog, such as Control Edit, Mid, 364, and so forth. And then we want our blog ID to show up in there as well. And you'll see that blog ID is not in this line right now, and that really needs to be there. So what we're going to do is when we stick something in this edit URL, we're going to say blog ID, which means we want to add it to that URL line. And then here is the value we want to stick in there, which again is blog ID. And this is the blog ID that we're pulling from our database. Everything else I think is going to be, we can leave exactly the same as it was when we started. I'm going to hit Control S to save. I won't even need to rebuild at this point. Let's just click on blog. And sure enough, we have pencils. Now if you look down bottom here, if I hover over this, you'll see that it says tab ID, control edit, module ID 364, and sure enough, blog ID 2 is in there. And if I hover over this one, it says blog ID 3 down bottom. And if we click on it, there we go. It passed it through for us. It says blog ID 3. And here's the text of my blog. Now, I'm not sure why strong isn't showing up in here the way it should be. Let's try setting it like this, just for fun. And we'll update. Now, we're still not showing here the way that it should be. It's not coming through as HTML, and so we're going to have to fix that. However, everything is coming up as we expected. The test title, we do now have the ability to edit this, and at this point we just need to fix why this isn't showing up as HTML, and we need to work on our settings, our module settings, and we'll take care of those in the next installment. Okay, in order to figure out why we're getting this, we're actually seeing the tags down here instead of seeing the HTML in a bolded line like we would expect. In order to troubleshoot this a little bit, let's go into our SQL Server real quick and take a look at what we have. And I've expanded this a little bit, and you can see that in our SQL Server we don't have hard-coded HTML. It has actually inserted the _LT and _GT tags, and so when it comes out on our screen, it's showing up as as tags and not as actual HTML. And what we're going to need to do is decode that. And this is another good lesson of how to handle things. And once again, what I'm going to do is go back to our frequently asked questions module, and let's look at how the core team did it. So we'll open that up. There's our VB. And I previously opened this up, ASCX, and right here you can see HTML decode. And HTML decode is not a function that we've written yet, so let's just go ahead and copy this real quick. We'll paste it in right around this data binder. I'll put an end bracket on that and save it. Now HTML decode is actually in the VB portion here. Here we go. And I'm going to copy that, go to our VB portion of blog, make a space for it, and paste it in. Now, one thing I do want you to notice, and this will drive you insane if you're not aware of it, this is a public function, not a private one. If you set this to private, the web page, the ASCX page, will not be able to access it. So you need to make sure anytime that you call a function like this and passing the data binder info to it, it must be set as public. Other than that, you're pretty good. It will always come in as a string value, and it is best to send things back as a string value to the HTML page. So they've already written the HTML decode code for us. It's really pretty simple. One other thing we should take a look at while we're here is you'll notice that try and catch is around pretty much everything we do. And then here it says process load module exception. That's what gives us the nice formatted exceptions and keeps things from really becoming a showstopper when a problem happens. So if you can, as you're coding, add this try and catch around everything exactly. This portion is the part I'm worried about. Make sure this is exactly like you see it. If you want to add some extra stuff in there, sometimes I do a response write and write out extra information. That's fine. You can do that in addition to the process module load exception, but you probably should not get rid of it unless you have good reason. So with all that done, let's go ahead and do a rebuild. And I'm going to refresh this page, and let's see if that makes the change for us. And hopefully this should turn into a bolded my now. And there we go. The screen is refreshed, and there we go. My is bolded just like we expect. And let's just go test it one more time. This is the text of my blog. And you can see in the HTML that we added strong, and I added the bold tags before, so let's update that. And both words should be bolded now, and sure enough they are. Okay, everything appears to be working pretty well. So the only thing we have left to do at this point is to work on this portion, the settings module, which is if we go into settings. There we go. There's nothing here right now. We need to add our own settings down here, and that will finish off our blog module for now, and then we'll go ahead and learn how to package and upload the module so that other people can benefit from what we just built. And that'll be in our next installment.